Hello, and thank you for stopping by the 741 channel. Today's project is going to be to replace these old Kidde smoke alarms that I have in my house with new first alert smoke alarms. So the reason I'm doing this today is that my Kidde system is about 8 years old, and when the smoke alarms get to be about that old, it's a good idea to change them out. And in fact, this one here, my smoke and carbon monoxide alarm, is actually no longer functioning. It actually now chirps all the time because it knows that it needs to be changed. So rather than replace the system with new Kidde units, which would have been fine, I decided to change over to first alert. Now this particular Kidde unit that I have here has given me trouble over the years. In fact, what has happened more often than not is that every time I change the battery, the tabs have kind of flattened out, and then a couple of weeks after the battery gets changed, it starts to chirp as if the battery is low or dead. So I've had to go in and bend the tabs and fool with this thing periodically over the years. So otherwise it functioned fine, so that's really kind of a minor complaint. So now I actually have all the other smoke alarms in my house are also Kidde brand, and they've been fine. I've had no issues with those, with false alarms or anything like that. It's just this combo detector that's been a little bit flaky over the years. The other problem with this is that not so much a fault of the unit itself, but just the design of this unit. This is an ionization type detector, so it tends to pick up smoke from kitchen and cooking and that sort of thing and give a lot of false alarms. So what I wanted to do was replace this with a photoelectric type detector, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Now I'm not going to replace just the one detector that's failed on me, or rather expired, I guess is the better way to say it. I'm going to replace all the detectors in this house at this time because they're all the same age, and like I said, it's a good idea to change them every 7 to 10 years, I guess. So the reason I decided to change brands too is that because my Kidde units are all the same age, they're all about 8 years old now, even though the other smoke alarms in the house haven't given me any trouble at all, they've worked flawlessly, this particular one has been a little flaky. So I decided since I was going to upgrade them all anyway, I'd switch over to the first alert brand and see how those work. The cost comparison was about the same, so not really any other reason other than to just try another brand. I'm not necessarily dissatisfied with the Kiddes or anything like that. They seem to do the job other than this being a little flaky. But like I said, we'll just give these guys a try and see how they do for the next 7 to 8 years. So currently in the house, I have the one Kidde combo smoke alarm and carbon monoxide alarm, and then the other 4 are just smoke alarms. But what I decided to do was replace the smoke alarm that I have in the cellar with a combo detector this time. And then the other ones are going to remain smoke alarms. So I've got 3 just plain old smoke alarms and 2 combo detectors that we're going to install today. So let me talk a little bit about why I chose the smoke alarms that I did. So first of all, I wanted a smoke and carbon monoxide alarm to replace the main one that I had in the house, the Kidde one that I've been showing. But the main difference is that you may be able to see from the package here, this one is a photoelectric detector as opposed to an ionization detector that the other one is. This one should be a little bit more resistant to the kitchen type false alarms, meaning that when we cook something on the stove and it gets a little smoky, this one should be less susceptible to going off. And this one should be also a little bit better at detecting fires that start sort of from embers or sort of like a smoldering type fire, as opposed to the ionization detector, which is a little bit better at detecting flash fires or a fire that spreads rapidly. I think this will work just fine because the other smoke alarms that I have in the house that are in the bedrooms, I'm going to use ionization detectors. And these are all going to be located probably about 5 to 6 feet away from this one, just the way the house is and the way the codes are. So I think I'm covered on both arenas up here on the first floor. So down in the cellar, I decided to upgrade my ionization type smoke alarm to a combo carbon monoxide and smoke alarm, and also do a photoelectric style instead of the ionization for 2 reasons. One is that this will be located next to my wood stove, which sometimes triggers the ionization detector when I open the door to put wood in it, because, you know, the smoke just comes out. And the other reason I thought a photoelectric detector would be better is because any fire that might be started by the wood stove would tend to be more the smoldering, embering type, so this would do a better job detecting that in the first place. And of course I'd like to have the carbon monoxide ability down there as well, because that could be a concern down there. And right now I don't have the ability to detect that. Let's take a look and see what's inside the box for the smoke and carbon monoxide alarm. So here's a look at the new first alert unit next to my old Kidde unit. You can see that this is physically a lot smaller. That's okay because they include a new base and everything like that, so I'll just have to change the bases that I have installed in the house already. So another thing that I'm going to need to change between the two units is the wiring. You can see that the Kidde uses a 3-pin connector, but it's in a different configuration than the 3-pin connector for the first alert. That's not too big of a deal since they include this pigtail. We should be able to remove the old pigtail from the house and just reinstall this one, and it shouldn't be too big of a deal. We'll just have to make sure we shut the power off so that we don't get electrocuted. Also in the box we have some instructions here. We've got English and it looks like we've got Spanish. And we've got a warning sticker here. So we even have a dust cover that comes with this. Now this would be useful for a contractor who was doing renovations or building a house. You could get the smoke alarms installed and then cover this up so they don't get fouled up while the construction is being completed. So that's kind of a nice touch. We won't need this, but good to know it's there. So here's a look at the smoke alarm, the one without the carbon monoxide detector. This is the first alert unit. You can see it's smaller than the old Kidde unit, again, but it does come with its own base, so that won't be an issue. So you can see here we got a new pigtail that we can use to replace the old pigtail that would hook up to the Kidde unit. And once again we have instructions and we have a dust cover. So the way my house is set up, it's just basically a ranch, and the kitchen is behind us, and this is the end of the hall where the bedrooms are. So you can see there's one bedroom on the right, one on the left, and a third bedroom here where the door is open. And then sort of at the end of the hall, in between all the bedrooms, is the master, or what I'll call the master alarm, and that's where I had my combination smoke and carbon monoxide alarm. So what we're going to have to do now is change the pigtail on all of the existing installations. You can see here that this one is the old Kidde style connector. So one thing to note is that this wiring right here is currently live, and it's the standard 120 volts from the house wiring. So you want to be careful that you don't get electrocuted. So the first thing that you ought to do if you're attempting this yourself, and the thing that I'm going to go do right now, throw my main breaker and then check the wiring to make sure there's no voltage on here, to make sure that I threw the correct breaker. Okay, so I've got the breaker thrown and I've checked with the meter that I don't have any power here anymore. So I've pulled the wires out so I can get at them. And you can see there's a black, a red, and a white. Now this follows sort of the standard house wiring where the black is the hot, so to speak, the white is the neutral, and this red wire is sort of the signal wire that connects all the detectors together so that if one detector goes off, the others will all go off at the same time. So really all I'm going to do now is just undo these wire nuts and pull the old pigtail out of the way. So I've got my new BRK First Alert pigtail here ready to go, the one that came with the alarm. And you can see that they've pre-stripped the wire ends, so I can just pull off the pieces of insulation here. So I've got the white and the black ready to go, and I'm going to put those in first. The red one has sort of this bulb on here, and I'll deal with this in a minute. But since I'm up on the ladder, I'll just reconnect these here now. So I ended up getting my cutters here so I can strip this wire. You can see that it's not pre-stripped like the others. It has this red bulb on there to kind of protect it. I think they do that in case you try and wire this up in a house that doesn't have interconnected smoke alarms. This won't have, you know, an exposed end that could get in the electrical box and short out to something that it shouldn't. So I'm going to strip this out. And it looks like we need to get a little more of that insulation off. Alright, so I've got the new pigtail in, and I've checked all the wires here to make sure they're not going to pull out. So we should be good to go there. Now the next thing that I need to do is change this base. Now actually, now that I think about it, probably would have been easier to do this before I put the new pigtail in, but either way we should still be able to get it done. Now there's just 2 screws holding it on. So I'll just back these out, and I shouldn't need to back them out all the way even. Just back them out enough so that I can pivot this down. So just back those out enough so I can pivot this around and slip this through the fat spots. So there we go, we got it out. Okay, so I've got the new alarm here, and the base is still on it, so I'm just going to twist and remove the base so that we can install that in the ceiling. So we're going to put this in just the opposite way that we took the old one out. But you can see this one's got a little bit of a different pattern on it. I guess that can configure to fit different size boxes or something, but basically we're just going to slide this up through the wiring, and then we're going to find the holes here, and we'll just slide those through. The screw ended up getting a little loose on me. Yeah, of course it did. So I ended up losing one of those screws. I'm just going to snug this up so it will stay up there while I get off the ladder and get the screw I dropped. Okay, so we've got this snugged up into place. I'm going to tuck the rest of these wires up in here and leave the pigtail hanging down so that I can plug that into the smoke alarm here. And we'll just line the connector up the right way. And then, so now we should be able to just twist this into place once I get the tabs lined up. And that should do it. That's locked into place. So that's pretty much it. The only thing that we'll have to do now is when we're ready to activate the system, I'll pull this plastic tab out of here to activate the battery. So that's pretty much it for installing the combination alarm. Now I'm going to put just the plain old smoke alarms in the 3 bedrooms here while I'm at this end of the house and have the power off down here. The procedure is pretty much the same, so I'm not going to bother showing that on the video. But once we get down cellar, I'll show you that one. So we've got all of the smoke alarms set up upstairs. And you can see I've got my wood stove there. So you may be able to tell, or maybe you can't, but this is just a plain old smoke alarm. But I thought it would be a good idea to have a combo one down here to detect carbon monoxide as well, since I have the wood stove and I have the furnace down here, which could both generate carbon monoxide. The other thing that I wanted to do down here is replace this ionization style detector with a photoelectric style detector. The photoelectric detector should be a little bit better at detecting what they call smoldering type fires. So if I were to dump some hot coals out of the wood stove and not catch them, and they started to kind of smolder and catch something on fire down here, the photoelectric type should be better at detecting that type of fire. The photoelectric detector should also be less susceptible to false alarms, which sometimes happen when I open the door of the wood stove to put wood in. I'll get a little bit of smoke comes out, and sometimes it sets off this detector. Okay, let's try this out. We've got the power off, so we'll take this guy down. Can you hand me the meter?
What?
Can you hand me the meter?
Meter.
Oh, I got it right here. What does the meter say?
0, 0, 0. So 3 zeros and then 3.
That's good. That means there's no power. If there was power, we'd have 120 point something.
I was gonna put it on his hair.
Alright, that works. Alright, here's the old smoke alarm. Can I have the drill?
Drill. There's the drill.
I'll give you this old wire.
Okay, and I'll give you the new wire. Here's the new wire.
Hold on, let me get this out of the way. I need the mounting plate first.
But can I just give you the
All right,
wire
I'll put that up here. That should be good. Do you want to hold the drill?
Okay.
Here you go. Okay, so we'll just check these out, make sure they're on there good and tight. Now we can put these up in the box. And we're ready to connect the alarm. So now we'll put this back in place. And now we should be good to go. Now that all the units are installed, I'll put the breakers back on and pull the battery tabs out of there to activate them. Okay, so now we'll pull this tab out of here and make sure the battery is seated, and that means this should be activated and ready to go. So that's pretty much it for replacing my Kidde smoke alarm system with a BRK first alert system. One other thing I'd like to mention before I end the video is to remind everyone to check your smoke alarms twice a year, check the batteries, and check to make sure that they're still working. A good time to do that is when daylight savings time ends and begins. And of course, like I did, it's important to replace your smoke alarms at the manufacturer's recommended intervals, because after a certain amount of time they're no longer effective or not as effective. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to leave a comment or subscribe, feel free to do that as well. Thanks for watching.